Part 35. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 348. If there is no such elemental ocean in the bottom of the earth, even if it can be completely transformed into an ether through the four elements of true spiritual resonance, it will only be a moment of glory and peak, and will certainly continue from this peak. Drop and change into four basic elements. But now, by drawing more and more of the essence of ether, the inert ether crystals precipitated by Zywei are more and more crystallization, which will be the biggest dependence of Zywei's stable transformation into the etheric form in the future. The vast ocean of elements gradually transforms into ether, and it is constantly transformed from active ether to four basic elements. In this cyclical change, the elements that Zywei can control gradually expand and eventually spread to the limit, all the oceans of the whole element. The elements have been incorporated into this transformation cycle. Even though Zywei has jumped to a very high level of soul, it has become very difficult to make this transformation, just like the old cow pulls the car. If it is not the soul of Zywei that has been transformed into a dream star in the endless river of silence, then when his body is completely elemental, his soul cannot exist in the elemental body. However, Zywei did not blindly promote this transformation process. He has already generated the elemental heart. Under the state of the element, all the understanding and application of the elements are in a relaxed state. Zywei maintains this relaxed state, such as the same cycle of breathing and the expansion of this elemental transformation, gradually taming these original wild elements. The etheric essence of the crystallization of the center of the etheric light group of Zywei itself is more and more, which is a precious wealth, the highest level of energy extracted from the entire ocean of elements. Zywei instructor has done it. He has already incorporated the entire elemental ocean into his own control. Now this piece of ocean has been attributed to the order of elements set by the Zywei instructors, Yang calmly shouted in the weekdays. It's not that he is not excited. This close-up view of the Zywei instructor is a sacred feat. He is undoubtedly a pilgrimage to the elemental magician. The mystery of the ether also reveals the mysterious veil in front of him. From now on, the Westway mentor will lead the development and growth of the elemental school. Merrill has already witnessed the excitement of tears in his eyes. He is already a well-deserved master of elemental magic. In fact, the real incarnation of the ether, and gradually grasp the mystery of the ethereal Zywei has begun to explore the legendary magician who belongs to the peak of the element. If Zywei is willing, he can easily accomplish the elemental magic master immediately, just as easy as breathing. Under the combing of Zywei, it is like opening up the wilderness into a good field. The wild elements of the original local bottom of the magical ocean gradually differentiated, and finally formed four seas with four distinct elements of the earth's fire and feng shui. The sea of elements completely fills the bottom of the magical demon, and if the essential elements are quietly flowing here, no one can imagine that it was once a place where wild elements are gathered. In this transformation process, Zywei almost drew all the etheric essence. The etheric light group that he now belongs to is just like a statue made entirely of colored glass, which shines to the extreme. With the power of himself, Zywei calmed down the wild and incomparable underground magical zone and transformed it into the ocean of four basic elements. This will become the holy place of the entire Smov plane, which will be the grace of the blue miracle. Zywei will build a new blue great temple here. With this four basic elements of calm, it can be said that all the blues in the plane are under the grace of the blue god. No obstacles. Zywei does not intend to live in the shape of a glassy etheric element. Although it looks very cool, he slowly differentiated into four equal-sized glazed etheric essences, leaving the four etheric essences to leave their bodies and reconvert. It has become the four basic elements of geothermal feng shui. In the form of etheric element, Zywei stretched out his finger and gently touched the yellow light group. With a humming sound, the earthly true yak reshaped. After this transformation of the ether and the return process, the earth really seemed to have got it. A new life, become more powerful, full of the power of God. The fiery phoenix, the blue wind true spirit, the pure water true spirit Shi reshaped, they become more and more vivid. The inner energy level has also jumped to the higher level, almost the purest element, in the or on the main material plane where the special continent is located cannot be found at all. I am afraid that only in the depths of the mysterious four elements of the plane, there will be such a pure element. After reenacting the fire and feng shui, Zai Wei began to reshape the flesh and blood, and the whole elemental body was put into the brain that was preserved by Zero and rebuilt into a heart lake. However, this time the heart of the lake is centered on the essence of pure ether, and the four elements of the heart lake have become subordinate decorations. The main organs of Zai Wei, such as the heart, and various systems are also preserved by Zero. His whole person is flowing in the faint silver light. This is the silver moon's martial art, belonging to the grace of the silver moon goddess. A large amount of nutrient solution completely immersed the body of Zai Wei in it, and began to proliferate less important parts such as blood, bones, and skin. This process lasted all day, and in the unbelievable eyes of Yang and Meryl, the body of Zai Wei finally completed the reorganization. This reorganization is not a simple recovery of flesh and blood. In the process, Zai Wei has remained awake. He insisted on integrating the etheric essence into the new body. It can be said that his new body has now become the perfect element of blood, for the four basic elements have the purest intimacy. Any elemental spells will be as easy and casual as breathing. This time, the pursuit and experiment of the mystery of the ether, Zai Wei achieved perfect success. When it appeared again in front of two proud disciples, Zai Wei had reapplied the robes of the blue gold line, which is the symbol of the highest level of the blue warrior. Congratulations to Zai Wei tutor, although there are still many places that I don't understand. Yang knows how important the success of this experiment is to Zai Wei. Xavier brother, I am more and more admire you. Meryl smiled and plunged into the arms of Zai Wei. Zai Wei is in a very good mood. He has completed the most crucial exploration and experimentation of the mystery of the ether. He can be promoted to the master of elemental magic almost any time and anywhere. The magical power of the lake in the essence of the etheric essence has surpassed the etheric ball. Nearly infinity. It can be said that Zai Wei now has enough self-protection ability even in front of the legendary strong, so that he has enough confidence to go to Wangdu Pai Li. To be continued. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Du. Chapter 349. Zai Wei used the entire four elements of the wild elemental ocean in the bottom of the earth to transform into a calm sea of 6 elements, plus a day to reshape the flesh and blood. Just 7 days passed. Solomon, who received the blue sacred god, has led the priests such as Aho, Eminem, and Red Fire to arrive here. The 3 people of Zai Wei have entered the invisible state under the effect of the dark side of the moon, and the Zero voice appears directly in the ear of several temple priests. I have already settled this chaotic elemental ocean and put everything into order. From today on, it will be the holy land of the entire Smov people. With the of Zero, Zai Wei, suspended in midair, began the construction of the Blue God Temple. For Zai Wei, who has mastered the mystery of ether, building a temple has become so simple. Under the gaze of the priests of the blue sacred temples, the sea of the 4 elements that were originally calm has suddenly ignited high waves, which gradually solidified and formed yellow, red, green and blue. The mysterious buildings are finally linked together. The sacred statues of the blue and beautiful gods stand tall in the center of the 4-color buildings, and the elements are completed. Solomon slammed down to the ground and slammed a few heads on the ground. He was so excited and full of tears, shouting loudly, like the Lord's blue big God. Solomon certainly knows what it means to do this. The thin elements of the entire Smurf will gradually fill up with the sea of calm elements. The Smurf race will also be filled more and more elements and embark on a new peak. All of this belongs to the grace of the blue big God. I witnessed the miracle of the completion of the temple. All the temple priests stumbled behind Solomon and praised the blue and bright gods. They are now the most devout believers, and the loyalty of faith is beyond reproach. Ziwei instructor, this is. Yang, who was invisible in midair, looked at the scene with some incomprehension. Isn't the statue of the blue big is Professor Zero? It's just an experiment about gods and beliefs, Ziwei replied with a smile, as if he had done a trivial little thing. Ziwei handed 2 diamond-shaped crystals shining with the stars to Yang and Meryl. This is the key to the 2 planes, which can be transmitted to and from the Orient and Smoth planes through the plane. The temporary time lapse of the plane is only a quarter of the main material plane. You can often come here to perceive elements and study spells. Yang, Meryl, you all have excellent talents, and also have a firm belief that you will inevitably achieve a brilliant career in the future. But for you, the most lacking is time. I hope this plane can make up for you. One thing, I hope that you can grow up quickly. Thank you for the careful cultivation of Ziwei's mentor, Yang responded steadily. Thank you, Ziwei brother, I will not let you down, Meryl replied with a smile. With this newly developed elemental sea, the Blue Big God Temple will undoubtedly carry out the development of the entire Smoth plane, and will include all the Smoth tribes in the entire plane into the Order of the Blue God. This is a magnificent war, but it is irrelevant for Ziwei, because the Blue Big Temple will inevitably be a thunderous victory. Leaving Meryl and Yang in the elemental sanctuary, they were close to the elements of change, and he returned to Violet alone. The Violet was once again loaded with a new apprentice from Toulon Port, and another 200 people joined the Violet Academy. With a large number of high-quality morning wheat from the Smurfs, it is very easy to support even tens of thousands of people. In terms of safety, even if he left the Violet Academy, there are 6 high-level magicians such as Christine and Morris in the college, and in the Night Elf village, there is also a master-class Luna priest. Nowadays, the Black Scorpion is bathed in the grace of Ms Yunyu. She has grown up and does not know how much. She has her shelter. As long as there is no legendary level of harassment, the safety of the Violet Academy does not need to be worried. Natalia and Ilya have not returned from the deep sea plane, and Freya has been accompanying them, and there is no time to do blood research. Time has come to the Holy Calendar in May 1787. After spending a few sweet couple nights with Charlotte, Ziwei has finally embarked on a journey to Wangdupali, and Zero will continue accompanied him. Ziwei himself received the invitation of Victor Hugo and the Lord of Music Sophie Mathilde, the feedback from Baron Humphrey, even the French King Charles VIII. I know myself. Although I don't understand why the Church of the Glorious Lord did not do anything, Ziwei never dared to ignore the most powerful force on the mainland of the Orient. He believed that any believer of the Glorious Lord would never allow himself to easily be in the people. The extension is the influence of magic. However, his 3 magical popular reading materials have been sold throughout the French kingdom for almost half a year. The Church of the Glorious Lord has not made any moves, which makes Ziwei very surprised. The practice of Ziwei and Zero in the Smoth plane proves that even if the Church does not really reach out to the gods or demigods, even if the Church develops smoothly, the faith of the believer will be pious, and it will not be able to harvest even a little of the gods. Divine power. Compared to the Lord of Change, Victor Hugo is a legendary magician who created a change school spell. Ziwei is more interested in music master Sophie Mathilde. What exactly is the master of music? Is it a legend, a sanctuary, or a demigod who intends to use the musical belief to seal God? Ziwei believes that this trip to Wangdupali will inevitably be wonderful, and he will also see more exciting styles belonging to the mainland of the Orient. By the time of Ziwei's present situation, a trip can be very simple. Ziwei only needs 2 space shifts, and it can directly reach the port of Toulon in the southern part of the French kingdom from Violet Island. If you choose high-speed flight, you can also arrive in Wangdupali within a few days. However, Ziwei did not rush so quickly. He set aside enough time to let him idle and take a leisurely adventure. Therefore, after moving directly to Toulon port, Wei chose the most traditional way of travel, that is, join a caravan and take a carriage to Wangdu Pai Li. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Du. Chapter 350. In the former Kingdom of France, almost 90% of the population lived in the countryside. There were goblins, beasts, and bandits everywhere in the wild. The nobles set up taxes everywhere, and the city was almost synonymous with dirty and messy. However, with the gradual development of human civilization, especially in the era of the devastating population explosion in the last 200 years, almost all the wilderness in the wild has been turned into a field, and almost all the goblins and beasts have completely disappeared. The roads between cities have also been gradually built, and commercial trade has become more and more developed. More and more people have changed the fate of the earth, and began to read and enter urban life. As one of the largest ports on the southern coast of the Kingdom of France, Toulon has a population of more than 300,000 people, almost all of which depend on commercial trade. Seafarers from dozens of countries and city-states pass through the Golden Sea. Docked. The land transportation of Toulon port to other cities in the French-speaking kingdom is also very prosperous. One of the roads leading to the north of Wangdu Pali is the Toulon United Chamber of Commerce and the Lord of the Toulon area. The road built by Count Nobel. The Bonaparte Chamber of Commerce is one of the 7 large chambers of commerce and has its own seats in the Municipal Council of Toulon. Wei chose to ride the carriage provided by the Almaty Chamber of Commerce, which is a professional chamber for transportation business. The days of May have gradually warmed up. Wei is wearing a light blue suit with a pair of black-rimmed glasses. The blonde hair is neatly combed, with a brown suitcase on the right and a yellow suitcase on the left. Put a huge black umbrella. Although it is now a human form, the appearance of Wei still reaches a handsome degree of dazzling. Just standing quietly at the door of the car, the people coming and going on the streets of Oswego also cast a lot of attention. After nearly a quarter of an hour in the long queue, Wei finally came to the ticket window. When he reshaped his body, he set his height directly at 1 meter. The ticket window was a bit too low, and he had to bend over and go forward. A ticket to Wangdu Pai Li. The ticket was sold to a middle-aged man in his 40s and 50s. He had already begun to bless and his skin was very slack. He looked at the young and handsome Wei, who was impatient and pointed to the price list hanging outside the small window. Wei gently lifted his glasses and found the information he needed in the 3rd row of the price list: Toulon, Parly, 2nd class ticket, 1 gold franc 7 silver sol. Although there are several major gold coins in the mainland, the value is similar, and the exchange price of gold and silver coins is basically fixed at a ratio of 1:10. The price of the 2nd class ticket is obviously still relatively expensive, and the 3rd class ticket only needs 5 silver sol. Although Wei wanted to experience life, he did not intend to grieve himself. Therefore, he bought a 2nd class ticket for the 10th magic in the morning and walked outside the city of Toulon. The north gate of Toulon city is the headquarters of Alfonso's car and horse. There are a lot of carriages parked here, and there is an uncomfortable suffocating air in the air. The earliest rise of mankind relied mainly on the extraordinary power of the blood knight, and for the knight, the importance of the mount is self-evident. Every family of blood knights that have existed for hundreds of years has a unique recipe for training horses, and the Alfonso family is no exception. Although the horses used by Alfonso's horses are all defective after being selected and eliminated in the family, they also look very powerful. The carriages are very large, and there are about 8 passengers in a 2nd class carriage. It was already 9:30 when Wei arrived. He handed the ticket and was led by a teenager in his teens to a carriage behind the team. The seats in the carriage are 2 rows, 4 people can be seated in each row. Now there are only 2 seats in the 2nd row. Wei chose the one by the window and placed the suitcase under the seat. Wei just sat down, and an old man around him smiled and asked, "Young people, is it to Wangdupai?" "Yes," Wei nodded. The old man, wearing a black bowler hat and wearing a fitted outfit, was a gentleman. "When you look at your age, you should be a college student who goes to Wangdu to go to school." As early as 1456, the then King Charles III built a university town on the outskirts of Wangdupali, cultivating various literature, business, art, talents in industries such as construction. "No, in fact, I am a writer," Wei showed a kind smile. "I like to travel, I like writing, this is my hobby, but also my profession." "Writer? What an elegant and cultural profession," the old man sighed. "Can you take the liberty to look at your masterpiece?" Just then, a hurrying figure suddenly rushed over. This is a young man who has long brown hair and a mustache, his body is thin, his eyes are deep, and he looks a little languid. "This is my ticket." The green ticket was handed over to the attendant. The young man opened the curtain and took the carriage. He was squeezing in the middle of Wei and the old man. He breathed in a hurry. Obviously, the madness of the previous wasted his physical strength, but this effort was very worthwhile, because the carriage was started soon, and along the flat and wide avenue, passing through the north gate, paid the necessary taxes and fees, then left the port of Toulon. This is a very large fleet. There are about 50 carriages, most of them with the logo of the Alfonso car and a small team of Alfonso family cavalry. In the middle of the team, there are 3 white luxury carriages that stand out in the almost black horse team. The exchange between Wei and the old man was interrupted, and there was more than one person between them. Therefore, there was no interest in continuing communication. The road outside Toulon was relatively flat. Wei took out a book and looked at it with relish. "It's up." The young man who got on the train was a little fanciful. He was very handsome, but he was slightly undersized compared to Wei. He wore a sweater and swelled in a bag. Some people are curious about what kind of books Wei is reading. The young people have come together, but they find that the books are full of small letters, and the whole person immediately feels dizzy. "I mean, what books are you reading?" the young man finally couldn't help but ask. The cover of 11 Wei's book is aimed at the questioner. The French aristocratic heraldry teaches you how to identify the nobility. To be continued. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 351. This book is too boring. "Right, my name is Johnny, a singer who is determined to be a bard." The young man named Johnny has a passion for self-commissioning. "Are you going to participate in this year's Midsummer Night Music Festival? This is the music event of the whole of the Orient continent, the highest performance in the year. Does this Midsummer Night Music Festival have such a big influence?" Wei nodded. "I am very interested in the Midsummer Night Music Festival." Johnny waved his fist with joy. "I guess it. Look at you, it should be a student." "No, you can guess wrong, this young gentleman is a writer." The old gentleman finally got a chance to plug in. "I am just about to pay tribute to Mr. Writer's masterpiece." Wei smiled a little, and took 2 books from the brown suitcase and handed them to the curious old gentleman and Johnny. The Old Man and the Sea. The Merchant of Venice. The carriage was idle, and the 2 simply took the book from Wei and looked at it. The celestial calendar of the 1890 Orient continent, although with the heritage of the nobles, although there is a glory of the true of the church, but the power of capital is rising. The merchants began to draw wealth, but also seeking higher political status. The feudal society is coming to an end. With the gradual increase of productivity, a new era is coming. No one is farther away than the stranger and the West. In the eyes of the king and the nobility, these merchants are nothing but greedy and arrogant inferiors, servants who help them accumulate wealth, and pigs that can be slaughtered at any time. However, no matter which world, the money has great magic, as long as it can find enough strength to shelter their more and more wealth accumulated through trade, then the rise of the bourgeoisie will be no more difficult. And 11 Wei and the magician he represents will be the power of this necessary support. Only by grasping this general trend, combining magic and capital, creating value with magical industrial production, using money to draw and divide enemies, and incorporating most ordinary people into the system of magical industrial civilization, so as to lead the arcane as soon as possible. The coming of the age. The identity of the best-selling author of Sci-fi began to play a unique role, which will be a propaganda channel for the entire continent of Orient, and a key identity for mastering the right to speak. The Simple Night Magician novel belongs to the pastime. Sci-fi began to try to transfer some of the classic works of the world, and slightly modified to conform to the background of the world, to continue to refresh the battle, and strive to change the name of Sci-fi Frost. It is a great writer who shines in an entire era. The two famous works adapted by Sci-fi are very consistent with the background of the times. The two readers are obviously attracted by the wonderful plots. They watched seriously along the way, completely ignoring the shaking caused by the bumps of the carriage. The team finally stopped for 3 magical moments, and placed a round circle in the flat field on the side of the boulevard. The young servants quickly fed grass and water for the horse. The passengers can finally get off the wagon, disperse the wind and stretch the waist. Johnny's reading speed is very fast. The 50,000-word Venice Merchant has been read by him. He closed the book and stretched a lazy waist. It's good. Sherlock has bad news. Portia is really wit. The old gentleman is still holding the old man and the sea slowly watching. He has only turned a page for a long time, read very seriously, apparently completely infected by the story of the old fisherman Santiago. Johnny shouted to Sci-fi, who is still studying hard, "Mr. Sci-fi, my great writer, you can be too dull. Now it's a rare break, go for a walk outside the carriage." With the response from Sci-fi, Johnny happily took out a musical instrument from his own bag. This is a brass instrument with a slight copper rust, which has obviously been around for many years. The two walked out of the carriage in tandem. In the circle of the carriage, they gathered most of the passengers. They chatted with each other. Some people laid a layer of cloth on the ground and started to have lunch. Seeing No, the girl in the white dress over there is so beautiful, like a water lotus, Johnny whispered and said to Sci-fi, "There is the lady in the black gauze, how explosive the body is, I really want to communicate with her. But the one around her should be her husband, this is really regrettable. Sci-fi has no choice but to be so arrogant in any world. There is that." Johnny's eyes were sharp and almost pointed out some of the women in the entire team. This age is a bit too big, Sci-fi some cannot accept Johnny's taste. The big writer, it seems that you still don't understand the familiar beauty. Johnny looked regretted, the girl is too green, only the ripe fruit is more sweet. It seems that you should be very popular with the husbands. 11 Wei nodded, how to say that Johnny is also a small piece of meat. Of course, I don't know how many people's dream lovers, Johnny said with a smile, let me show you a hand. Johnny took his own instrument and walked straight to the center of the circle. Although he was unconstrained and somewhat untrimmed, the young and handsome face was very useful and not objectionable. Johnny pointed the brass instrument at his mouth and took a deep breath and began to play the best song. The sound of the instrument is crisp and bright, and it is gentle and gentle. Johnny's skill is very skillful. It is also a country tune that has been circulating for centuries in the southwest of France. Almost all passengers are very familiar. In Sci-fi's view, Johnny's instrument has the shadow of a saxophone, but it is not mature enough. The handsome Johnny matched his melodious country minor tune, which instantly caught the attention of the entire team. The original noisy conversation slowly calmed down, and everyone smiled and appreciated Johnny's performance. In the process of playing the game, Johnny was improvised in a performance with a dazzling performance. His aggressive eyes stayed on the beautiful people he had observed. Some people shyly escaped, and some people responded boldly. Johnny's playing lasted for about a quarter of an hour, and his face was red, obviously very happy, and ended with a slap. The audience gave warm applause, and there were a few hot eyes with deep thoughts. This made Johnny happy, and when he walked back to Ziwei, he was more proud than the peacock who opened the screen. To be continued. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 352. There are 3 chicks who have already sent me an invitation, and 5 will be able to win as long as they work hard, Johnny said proudly to Ziwei, the big writer. You are too reserved, or it is good with me, look, at least to develop a romantic surprise on the road. Congratulations for you, Ziwei smiled slightly, I still forget it. After Johnny, there were also a few bold young people who went on to perform, but not as good as Johnny. By the time the sun was about to set, the team stopped. It was in a lush field, and the team arranged vigils and guards. Most of the passengers were sitting in the carriage, taking out the blankets and sleeping on them for a night. Some more daring passengers hit the ground outside the carriage. Johnny walked out of the carriage the first time the carriage stopped, until the 10th magic time came back in the evening, with a strange smell on his body. 3 kinds of perfumes, Ziwei asked. Yes. Your sense of smell is really good, Johnny waved his hand proudly, sticking out 3 fingers, and his face had a red lip print. In the next 5 days, Johnny hooked up with 4 women. He was cleverly wrapped around 7 women like a butterfly. It really opened the eyes of Ziwei. 11 Wei also finally knows why Johnny has a good appetite, but his body is thin and his eyes are deep. As the Lord of Glory, the old gentleman was very angry after discovering the true face of Johnny. He was no longer willing to take care of him. Instead, he had a better relationship with Ziwei. In his view, the writer Ziwei is a promising person. Good young people. The old gentleman bought the 2 books of Ziwei and said that he would become his loyal readers in the future. Although Ziwei intended to give him, he still insisted on paying the price according to the price marked on the book. 4 days later, the team arrived in the 3rd largest city in the Kingdom of France, Lyon, the largest city in the south. Here, the team will sell a large number of goods, and many passengers have reached the end, so they will stay for 1 day, and the old gentleman will get off here. Johnny did not deal with the women anymore. He invited Ziwei, I just heard that at the Blue Charm Bar, there will be a music event tonight, and it is said that I will be invited to participate in Midsummer Night Music. The bards of the festival participate. This is a rare opportunity. Well, this is a rare experience. Ziwei left his luggage in the car and walked along the streets of Lyon with Johnny. Lyon is the 3rd largest city in the Kingdom of France, with a permanent population of more than 800,000 people. Therefore, the streets are very prosperous, with the sound of selling and the crowds. However, the Blue Charm Bar is not far from the car. When they walked less than half a magic, they found this bar in the garden area. Almost every city has a garden area, aristocratic area. The people living here are wealthy and well-stated. Therefore, the city is cleaned and clean, and every building is as beautiful as art. The Blue Charm Bar is a 3-story building with a single building. The entire wall is painted with a seductive blue-violet color, which looks full of art. Do you have 2 guests with invitations? Just after they reached the door, the 2 were stopped by a waiter in a red uniform. No. We heard that a music event will be held here tonight. I am a singer, he is my friend, a writer. We are all civilized people, Johnny explained. Without invitations, you have to pay a fee to get in 5 silver sols per person, said the waiter with a blank expression. 5 silver sol. Why don't you go? Johnny turned and opened his hands to Ziwei, it's ridiculous, Johnny is the first time I saw a bar that I have to charge to enter. It's a joke. I'm a singer. For so many years, at any bar, people have paid for me for my performance. but they didn't let us in. Johnny's pocket is cleaner than the face, obviously he can't get the 5 silver soul. Ziwei popped a gold franc and settled in the hands of the waiter. Johnny, my friend, try to use your performance to make them regret it. Hey, big writer, I finally realized that you are so noble morality, Johnny said with exaggeration, you are really a model of the upper class, I saw the shining light of virtue in you. Let's go, it's not too late, let's go in, this time is the peak period, and there are quite a few guests entering the Blue Charm bar. Ziwei can't stand Johnny's exaggerated performance and directly pull him. The sleeves went into the door. The interior of the Blue Charm bar is very spacious, with colorful headlights hanging from the ceiling, and the entire hall is dimly lit. Ziwei, this headlight is the specialty of Violet Island, commissioned by the Bonaparte Chamber of Commerce to sell the highest-end series of products. The Blue Charm bar is obviously not the kind of bar that serves the bottom of the society with only 3 coins and a beer. The guests here are mostly dressed in a sleek and elegant style. There is a harpsichord in the center of the bar hall. The musician is playing. The music festival was already very fast, and more guests walked into the bar. Ziwei and Johnny sat in the corner and ordered a bottle of red wine. This small one actually wants 8 silver soul. Johnny looked sad and angry. I dare say that their purchase price is definitely no more than 2 silver soul. On the ceiling, this lamp processing cost is less than 1 gold franc, the price is as high as 68 gold francs, so Ziwei does not mind spending a little bit of money. Although Johnny is very thick, he is just a young man who is not very famous. After more and more musicians appear in the bar, he can only drink a small wine like a real guest. I dare not perform in front of so many professionals. After another 2/4 of an hour, the guests in the bar's underwear were so turbulent that more than a dozen apparently higher musicians sorted out their clothes and walked out of the bar, welcoming the 2 old men and a young woman. Both of the old men have already had their hair gray, but the color is not bad. One is called the President of Lincoln and the other is called Aquifer Governor, which is obviously the organizer of this music event. However, the young woman seems to have only 2 decades of Chinese, with a white veiled tailcoat, a creamy white evening gown, noble and elegant. In her body, Ziwei discovered a unique emblem, which is the book The French Aristocratic Heraldry that he just read, belonging to the Luzzilus family, and Bordeaux, the 5th largest city in France, is the family manor. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 353. The title of the Kingdom of France is not easily separated. Each of the earl's titles is very noble. Almost all of them are dignitaries or centrally valuable, with a long history and heritage. The Luzzilus family has a legacy of the Marquis. What's more, the emblem of the Luzzilus family is the emblem of the 3 white luxury carriages in his team. This young lady turned out to be a member of the Luzzilus family, and it is no wonder that it can be treated so much by these musicians in Lyon. Johnny apparently noticed the dazzling young lady in the first place. His whole eyes began to sparkle, apparently shocked by the lady's brilliance. It wasn't until a group of people walked on the 2nd floor of the bar that Johnny reacted. He excitedly said to Ziwei, the big writer, you noticed it? Just now that girl. Her skin is as smooth as milk, her figure perfect to the extreme. She is the most beautiful and perfect woman I have ever seen in my life. The Luzzilus family is a family of warlocks. Although the lady did not awaken the family's blood, it also has amazing beauty and charm. In fact, in the upper class of the mainland of Orient, it is very difficult to find an ugly person. Because whether it is a blood knight or a warlock, these families who have passed hundreds or even thousands of years have chosen the best spouses to give birth to their offspring. Some families do not even marry outside, and internal digestion to maintain the purity of the blood, so it has been passed down to the present. The handsome man and the beautiful woman have become the norm. Johnny has always been proud of his extraordinary handsomeness, but in front of Miss Lascelles, this look simply does not represent anything. However, in the face of excitement, Johnny, who has been completely captured by Miss Lascelles, did not try to exhort him. He did not really fall asleep, he would not be awake. After the arrival of the president of the Lyon Music Association, Lincoln, the music event held at the Blue Charm Bar began. The musicians who are active in Lyon City have performed on stage. Their level is above the standard, especially in the beautiful Lou. In front of Miss Salas, several young musicians played extraordinarily, pushing the atmosphere of the whole party. However, most people play the more elegant music such as the keyboard and the violin, because the high-level players who have the right to speak in the music association, the songs that are played and the songs that are directly sung in the songs are all vulgar. The music is not elegant. The nobility should enjoy the elegant piano and violin music, and leave those songs to those inferior. However, in this peaceful atmosphere, there was a bold young man who suddenly rushed into the center of the stage. He had a very old brass instrument in his hand and wore a shirt that looked very decent and actually cheap. His face is excited red. "My name is Johnny, I am a singer. I want to dedicate a song to this beautiful lady." The audience was stunned, and a majestic middle-aged man shouted, "Who brought this rude inferior?" Soon the red waiter ran in, he paid 5 tickets for Silver Soul. The middle-aged man flashed a bit of disdain in his eyes. "Since I have paid the money, I am fortunate enough to listen to the wonderful performances of the musicians. It is the most fortunate thing in my life. I still want to play a song for Miss Lascelles. It is a delusion. Give him out." 2 strong waiters set up Johnny and they will throw him out. "Beautiful and kindly Miss Lucas, you are so beautiful, like the moon in the sky, you caught my whole heart, my eyes are involuntarily turning for you. I hope you can give me a chance." Johnny, who was framed up, looked at the woman in white with sincerity and recited in a sigh of generality. Miss Lascelles smiled like a flower, and the room was full of spring. "Give him a chance to play. If it is nice, let him stay." Miss Lascelles finally spoke, and the 2 waiters could only put the Wolverine Johnny down. "In this case, I will give you a chance." The middle-aged man looked at Johnny with some bad looks. However, Johnny, who was recognized by the goddess in her mind, had already left the threat of middle-aged people behind. He sorted out his clothes and put his brass instruments on his lips, and closed his eyes gently. The performance in front of the goddess. At this moment, Johnny was so focused, he almost played his skills to the extreme. What he played was also the country minor in the southwest of France. It was a song by a young man who expressed love to the shepherdess. The singing was very high, and almost all of the people sitting in it had heard it. The melodious tune of the tunes almost reached the limit that Johnny could do. Even in the case of Ziwei, it was a very good performance, completely inferior to the performances of the previous people. Even Miss Lascelles also showed her appreciation. However, at this moment, the sound of Johnny's sound suddenly became sharp and sharp, almost tearing the eardrum of the human being, like a huge stone breaking into the water surface that was not calm, causing a huge wave. Johnny didn't understand what was going on. He was so skilled with this piece of music. How could he make such a low-level mistake? But let him sweat and look red, but he can't restore the sound to normal. It's still terrible. Enough, President Lincoln finally spoke. "Young people, you are too disappointing. This is a slap on music." Johnny stopped playing, his eyes lost their focal length, and they sweated like they had just fished out of the water. "Throw him out," the middle-aged man shouted loudly. There was a smug look in the bottom of his eyes. "This is a bard?" It was obvious that the middle-aged man was at work, destroying Johnny's performance, and he changed the sound that Johnny had played. Miss Lascelles flashed a disappointing color in her eyes and shook her head gently, but did not say anything. This time Johnny was no longer struggling, leaving two red waiters with arms and the whole person had been taken off the ground. His performance was completely messed up, not only failed to capture the joy of the goddess, but turned into a laughing stock. Just then, a clear voice echoed in the hall, "Slow, he is my friend." The eyes of everyone turned to the corner. This is a handsome young man who is too dazzling with a book. The clothing on his body looked simple, but no one could distinguish the specific material. For a time, he could not judge the true identity of the young man. The audience was silent for a moment. To be continued. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 354. Ziwei, Yu. Johnny was anxious and happy. He did not expect Ziwei to be willing to start for himself at this time. Only in this way, I am afraid that both of them will be thrown out, but it is a pity that the bottle of red wine is only half. Here is the blue charm bar, which only accepts the most distinguished guests. When can anyone sing so casually? The middle-aged man flashed a stern color. Ziwei completely ignored the middle-aged man. He strode to the front of Miss Luzzulus. "Is it lucky to know the name of the lady?" "Call me Elena," Ms. Luzzulus responded politely. She felt a unique superiority from Ziwei, who had seen it in her father. Ziwei just stood still, but there was a momentum that could shock people. No sound was heard in the audience. Everyone's eyes fell on him. The two red waiters who left Johnny stopped. The footsteps. "I am going to play a piece of music for everyone to make up for the unhappiness that my friend brings to everyone." Ziwei smiled and looked around the entire bar hall, and suddenly there was a unique ukulele in his hand. This ukulele has a flat panel and a back panel. The waist of the piano is slightly centered and the neck is long. The fingerboard has a string pillow and a number of narrow and upwardly convex crossbars. This is the strange instrument I have seen has a strange charm. This is a guitar. Elena sat up straight, and she was very much looking forward to the next performance of the mysterious guest. The middle-aged people have made up their minds, and they must completely mess up the show. One song, Carmen, for everyone. Ziwei's left hand gently pressed on the fingerboard, the right hand of the long white fingers arbitrarily fiddled with the strings, giving a beautiful sound. Elena is keenly aware that this small, portable instrument can seem to play a wide enough range. Although there is no Bach in the world of Orient, it has developed a 12 average law. The structure of the piano and the piano are similar, but the development of the whole music has been confined to the upper class. More popular music and songs have not yet become popular. Stand up. When Ziwei's fingers fiddled with the strings and started playing the Carmen Overture, the entire bar hall was filled with lively and energetic music, which was almost played by a whole symphony orchestra. The brilliant performance was realized in a small ukulele in the hands of Ziwei. The guests present are not musicians or music lovers. They are attracted to this moving piece almost instantly. Okafor's fingers are involuntarily knocking on their legs in accordance with the beat. Lincoln's president also follows the music. Gently nod. Carmen was originally an opera, which mainly created a beautiful and reluctant gypsy girl, the female worker of the factory. She made the military squad leader Don Hauser fall in love and abandoned his lover in the countryside, gentle and kind Michaela. Later, Don Hauser was arrested and imprisoned for letting go of her fight with the women workers. After she was released from prison, she joined the ranks of her smugglers. However, Carmen later fell in love with the bullfighter Escamillo, and when people cheered for the victory of the Escamini bullfighting, she died under the head of Don Hauser. The main music includes the flute drum march We Are With the Soldiers, the aria Love Is Like a Free Bird, the aria Alcala Dragon Cavalry, and the most famous The Matador's Song. Ziwei only selectively played the most representative Carmen Overture, Love Is Like a Free Bird and the Song of the Matador, and the whole performance was performed in the cheerful The Song of the Bullfighter. The end is over. The middle-aged man tried to destroy the first time in the beginning of Ziwei's performance. However, he was frightened to find that his whole person seemed to be holding his throat in a pair of invisible hands, and even his breathing became so fast that he almost suffocated and died. In this case, he could not do any extra action at all, and the performance of Ziwei also ended perfectly. At the time of 11 Wei's tribute, the audience gave the warmest applause tonight. Whether it's Ziwei's exquisite performance skills or this novel instrument and the first time he heard the music, they all trembled. I am too excited to be myself. This should be part of a grand show, Miss Lucas said with some regrets. Mr. Dear Sir, can you know your name? Ziwei Frost, 11 Wei smiled and replied, this is supposed to be an opera, also known as Carmen. Master Ziwei Frost? But the author of the epic movements Moonlight and Fantasy of the Dream, Elena stood up fiercely and asked excitedly. 11 Wei nodded lightly. Elena stepped forward and she grabbed Ziwei's hand with excitement. I didn't expect Ziwei's master to be so young, I thought you would be a wise old man, only rich life experience can be written such a magnificent epic movement. Miss Luzzalus is a chasing star, but she is the most famous musician. Johnny is stupid. How can he not know the shining name of Sylvester Frost? With the epic movements of Moonlight and Fantasy Forest gradually popularized for countless people, Sylvester Frost has become a master of music without any suspense. He actually walked along with the masters of Ziwei, and was also called a friend by the masters of Ziwei. President Lincoln also rushed forward. He is a high-ranking director of the French Music Association. How do you not know how the master of music, Lord Sophie, valued the master of Sylvester Frost? For many years for the first time, Sophie personally sent invitations to invite people to participate in the Midsummer Night Music Festival. Almost in an instant, Ziwei became the center of the entire Blue Charm bar. All the stars surrounded him in the center, and they put down the restraint and nobleness, and kept smacking around him. Johnny squeezed several times, but it was hard to squeeze in. 11 Wei did not expect that he had such a lofty prestige in the music industry, because he was too young to influence the influence and appeal of the two epic movements of Moonlight and Fantasy Forest. As a result, Ziwei's plan was disrupted and he had to get out of the enthusiastic crowd as soon as possible. Master Ziwei, you should be invited by Sophie to travel to Pili to participate in this year's Midsummer Night Music Festival. We will also set off tomorrow, I wonder if I can go together, President Lincoln invited. No, I still have my own arrangements, Ziwei politely smiled, the friends are goodbye. The people involuntarily separated a road in front of him, and Ziwei went to Johnny, go, man. To be continued. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Du. Chapter 355. Out of the door of the Blue Charm bar, the cool midsummer night wind blew the two people's clothes fluttering slightly. Johnny faced Ziwei. He smiled awkwardly and shrugged his hands. I didn't expect the great writer Ziwei to be a master of music, Ziwei. You are really amazing, friend. In fact, these two professions are not my main job. Ziwei still appreciates Johnny. Although he is too overwhelmed, he is not the kind of person who likes to climb the camp and is very sincere. You can really make a joke, Johnny pointed to the ukulele in the hands of Seville. What does this instrument call? It's cool. I call it a guitar, do you like it? Ziwei put the guitar in his hand into Johnny's arms. Johnny took it up with impunity and mimicked the strings like Ziwei, it's very good, it feels like I'm a lot more chic. Then I will give you a gift as a friend, Ziwei said with a smile, I am very glad to meet you, I hope you can complete your dream and become a real bard. This is a score, there are some simple songs. It's too expensive. Johnny took a thick notebook from Ziwei's hand and he smiled. Since it's a friend's gift, I'm welcome. My time is tight, then say goodbye here, a white light shrouded Ziwei, see you, Pili. The next moment, 11 Wei's figure suddenly disappeared in front of Johnny, this magical move made Johnny jump. Xavi Frost, isn't it the author of How is the Magician Made? Johnny finally reacted. It turned out that for Ziwei, the magician is his real career. It's not bad to have such a friend, isn't it? Johnny smiled and held the wooden guitar in his hand tighter. At this moment, a group of people walked out of the Blue Charm bar, led by the president of the Music Association of Lyon, Miss Lincoln and Miss Luzzalus. "Mr. Johnny, Master Ziwei," Elena asked in a hurry. A white light flashed, he disappeared. Johnny shrugged. "Master Ziwei gave this magical new instrument to you," President Lincoln confirmed quickly. "Yes, he gave me a score, and I look forward to meeting him again in Wangdu Pai Li." Johnny seemed to realize what it was, so it was easy to say. "Elena seems to have some regrets." She showed an elegant smile to Johnny. She said softly in a tone that is noble and cute, "Who can't bear to refuse, Mr. Johnny, can you take a look at the master of Ziwei? This score. Although Miss Elena is the perfect woman Johnny has ever seen in her life, even if he wants to take the stars from the sky and give her Johnny, he will not hesitate to agree, but it involves the songs given by the master Ziwei, John." Ni still resisted the temptation of the beauty. "The Midsummer Night Music Festival is only over 10 days. I want to practice more and try to have a better performance at the festival." Elena didn't think that this seemingly ordinary young musician could resist her amazing charm. She could only retreat to the next level, "So I don't know if I can go to Wangdu Pai Li with Mr. Johnny. I can serve as an audience to help you better master the music in this score." This time, Johnny finally could not resist the reasonable request of Yelena. At this moment, President Lincoln and Akifer's director looked at each other and made up their minds. "Mike, come over," President Lincoln said with a light cough. The dignified middle-aged man came forward uncomfortably and realized that he would face a big problem after learning that the blond young man was actually a master of Ziwei. At this time, he can only do the last rescue, and quickly went to Johnny. A face said sincerely, "Sorry, Mr. Johnny, my mind is confused and I made an unforgivable mistake." The president of Lincoln, dissatisfied, interrupted his pleading, "Mike, the ability of the bard is to better express the charm of music, so that more people like music, rather than destroying others' performances like you." Johnny, who was confused, reacted. When he played the country song, it was the bard who secretly ruined his performance and made himself so embarrassed in front of Miss Elena. "Mr. Johnny, shouldn't you have an invitation to the Midsummer Night Music Festival?" President Lincoln turned to Johnny and said kindly. "Amount, of course not." Johnny's fiddled with his hair. "I just want to appreciate the performances of the masters, and I am very satisfied with the opportunity to perform on the streets and in the park. So I would like to recommend you as a representative of Lyon, to participate in the performance of the 3 days before the Midsummer Night Music Festival." "How?" President Lincoln said with enthusiasm. "This." Johnny didn't think he was so popular. Mike looked at President Lincoln unbelievably. He was not willing to remind, "But Mr. President, there is only one invitation in our city. It belongs to me." President Lincoln turned around, and the spring breeze on the face has turned into a harsh ice cold. "Mike, you are not worthy of being a bard. Your place has been banned. And go to the Wangdu Pali Music Association for further study. There is no chance." The director of Akifer also said coldly, "A person like you is a shame in our musicians. I will not write a letter of recommendation for you. No, my uncle is a senior director of the French Music Association. You have promised me for a long time." Mike never allowed his quota to fly away, he said gloomily. "Is it? Sorry, I am also a senior director of the French Music Association. I will be interviewed by the Lord of Music this time. I will mention this to her." Miss Luzzalus turned and smiled. And Mike said. However, these words made Mike the whole person fall into the abyss. Miss Luzzalus is the marquis of his uncle, who also wants to climb high. With her words, she has no chance. "You are very good." Mike finally tore his face, but he only dared to send his anger to Johnny. "I am waiting for your wonderful performance in Pai Li. Then Mike Yang went away and left everyone. He was very polite in his performance, and his accomplishments in music exceeded other candidates. President Lincoln shook his head. I didn't expect it to be such a poor person. So Mr. Johnny, congratulations on becoming a representative of the Lyon Music Association. Attend this Midsummer Night Music Festival. Elena showed a happy smile. I hope you will be successful. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 356. After 3 consecutive long-distance transmissions, Zai Wei came directly from Lyon to the outskirts of Wangdupali, and then chose to walk into the political, military, financial, and cultural center of the French kingdom. The Pailly Champs-Élysées is the most luxurious street in the whole kingdom. This thing is halfway up to 5 kilometers of the main street, where the highest capital of the king is gathered, and half of it is the boulevard, the most high-end chambers of commerce and consumer sites. The Fortune Chamber of Commerce, as one of the most influential chambers of business in Orient, has a magnificent 5-story building on the Champs-Élysées. It shines in the sunlight and looks like a big chunk. Pure gold carved bricks. The preparations for the Violet Chamber of Commerce were handled by Kami, who had just lost in the competition of the Rothschild family's patriarch and had a sufficiently sophisticated business person. Kami has decided to leave the behemoth of the Chamber of Commerce because he sees a brighter future. Sylvester Frost is bound to be the master of magic and will be the master of the legendary magician in the future, and he has absolutely no time to operate business. Kay has examined the potential of the Violet Academy, although only a part of the situation can be observed with his authority, but the bright future shown is enough for the card to be re-raised. This time, the promotion of the magical products of the Violet Chamber of Commerce, which is both a wind mobile and a camera, is of course a very important challenge. Zai Wei once made a request to Kami, that is, it must be a consensus on the mainland of Orient, that is, Violet produced, must be a boutique. So after this time, I returned to Paris and contacted the Fortune Chamber of Commerce in the Kingdom of France, Mrs. Adele, and the head of the Bonaparte Chamber of Commerce, Baron Humphrey, to do a lot of preparatory work. The Violet Chamber of Commerce does not currently establish a sales channel, only as a producer, and the Fortune Chamber of Commerce and the Bonaparte Chamber of Commerce are undoubtedly sellers. The primary promotion goal is the aristocrats, wealthy businessmen, and careers that enjoy the experience in Wangdupali. Both the camera and the wind mobile have developed more luxurious and high-end products for the needs of high-end customers. When Zai Wei saw Xie Miao, he had just returned from a high society gathering. In this gathering, he successfully gave a luxurious quality camera to the mayor of Pailly. This luxurious quality camera is more convenient than an ordinary camera. It has a Polaroid function, but it is not too bulky. The pre-sale price of each unit is 150 gold francs. The photo is much more realistic than the portrait, and it's so convenient and quick. With a simple push of a button, you can get a vivid photo immediately. This magical creation has been popular in France at a very fast pace. The card was only sent out of 23 samples, each of which was carefully considered. The Rothschild family is professional in business. Zai Wei is not very good at doing business. After a general inspection, Zai Wei affirmed the work of Kami and encouraged him to work harder. In the hands of Zai Wei himself, he held invitations from Victor Hugo and the Lord of Music Sophie Mathilde, taking into account the arrangements that were formed. In fact, before 11 Wei was able to fully understand the mystery of the ether and be able to promote the elemental magic master at any time, 11 Wei was afraid to come to Wangdupali and his party. Although both Victor and Sophie cast full goodwill, it is hard to be cautious in the face of a legendary magician and a mysterious powerhouse who seems to be interested in closing the gods. Although Zai Wei has not yet been promoted to the magic master, he is not a magician who specializes in spiritual magic. However, due to the multiple jumps in the soul level, he has easily manipulated all the thoughts, memories, and movements of an ordinary person. Then in front of the legendary magician, a high-ranking magician is afraid of the same weakness, and there is absolutely no means of defense. This feeling of young children facing the horror behemoth makes Ziwei very cautious. Before he grows strong enough, he will never easily face the too dangerous strong. Now, he can already achieve space and elemental masters of magic. He has basic self-protection ability even in front of the legendary strong. At the crucial moment, the etheric body and the unique in the void inheritance can pay a certain price and then break through the space blockade to transmit the secret of escape. This is the means of life-saving pressure box. In the end, Ziwei decided to go to the invitation of Lord Victor Hugo, the Lord of Change, because from a certain point of view, he did not conflict with the Lord of Music, but shared with the Lord of Change. Interest demands. After a restful night in the quiet and comfortable rooms, Ziwei left the Fortune Chamber of Commerce early the next morning and began to go to the Change Tower where the Lord of Change is located. This tower stands in the western suburbs of Par, and looks far like a horrible cyan dragon. A large area around the changing tower belongs to the headquarters of the French Royal Sorcerers Association. It is surrounded by high and low mage towers, like a tower of tall towers. Before coming to the appointment, 11 Wei also got some more public information from Victor Hugo from Camiao. Victor Hugo was the first legendary magician in the history of the Kingdom of France. He started the School of Change. He has a very famous saying, "Magic has no national boundaries, but the magician has his own country." After becoming a master of magic, Victor served as the principal of the Royal French Academy of Magic with the support of the King of France, where he conducted his own research and trained a large number of apprentices and disciples. As he eventually became the legendary magician became the most powerful patron saint of the French kingdom, the Change School also flourished throughout the Kingdom of France. He is committed to building a magic school within the Kingdom of France and cultivating more magicians. Today, the French Magician Guild can grow to such a large scale, second only to the Holy Norman Empire in the whole of the Orient continent. Kaduo Hugo has made great contributions. When Ziwei came to the Magician Guild headquarters, he directly showed the magical pressure of his vast magic. This pressure was so dignified that the attitude of the magician responsible for reception was straightened up. "Hello, here is the headquarters of the French Magician Guild. I am a four-ring master, Rio. I ask you, this is a magician about 30 years old wearing a dark green robe. I am Sylvester Frost, come at the invitation of the Lord of Change." Ziwei handed out the letter from the Lord of Change. Master Rio took it over and seriously, and the letterhead had the seal of the Lord of Change. He shuddered and performed a respectful mage ceremony. "Mr. Ziwei, please, let me later." Passing to the changing tower, someone will come to meet you soon. To be continued. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 357. Ziwei did not wait for a long time, and soon a young mage appeared in front of him. Although wearing a luxurious robe, the young man is obviously more like a warrior. He has a short board, and his body is slender and full of smooth muscles, just like a cheetah. Zinti, the student of the Lord of Change, came to greet the guests. There was a sharp light shining in his eyes, as if he had to throw down all the enemies that might exist in front of him, and the words were hard and arrogant. Ziwei has already opened up the real magic eye. Under the real magic eyes, the mystery of the young mage in front of him is invisible. He is a six-ring change mage who has begun to pursue the Master's card, which is more powerful than the daughter of the Elia Hugo, the Lord of Change. His true age is not large, at most he is only 30 years old, and he is a purebred human. Being able to achieve the last stage before the Magic Master without relying on any special blood before the age of 30 is already something that ordinary genius can do. "It's nice to meet you, Master Shinti. Civi Frost, this is my name." 11 Wei performed a courtesy of the Master. The mage ceremony was formed thousands of years ago, the earliest era. The magicians were full of chaos and distrust, and there was never any rule to regulate these superhumans who mastered the extraordinary power. The era of chaos is called the Dark Age of the magicians. After hundreds of years, the number of magicians has not increased much, and the magician has almost equated with the devil in the eyes of ordinary people. All this with the first law of Tolafod, the creation of the protection school, thus the first legendary magician, and the establishment of the 1,000 French tower on Mount Abis, the heart of almost all human magicians in the mainland of the Orient. The end of the Holy Land. The wizard's ritual was also regulated. Because the requirements of the earliest spells were very strict, the spell model was not mature at that time. Every spell, gesture, or casting material must be carefully prepared, and it should not be negligent. Therefore, the master's ceremony is a simple and full of elegant gestures and manners, which can largely waive the illusion that this master is casting a spell. The wizard who created the master's ceremony is born in the court aristocratic family. Master Zinti is a young man who is somewhat silent. The two have not communicated too much and soon appeared together under the changing tower. After a very close distance, Ziwei was surprised to find that the blue-green dragon above the Tower of Change is not a carved shape, but a shape of a real dragon's tibia that has been processed and transformed. The dragon's cheekbones are perfectly integrated with the towers under the architect's superb skills, and become a unique tower even on the entire continent of Orient. Although the dragon has already withdrawn from the most shining stage of the Orient continent, they have the strongest hostility towards anyone who dares to smash the dragon's corpse, and dare to take an adult dragon directly, like the changing Lord Victor Hugo. The corpse built a tower and successfully made this tower stand here for hundreds of years, which is really a very rare thing. All things in the world are not fixed, change is the eternal truth. Xian mentions the sentence in a fanatical tone, and the door to the changing tower is finally opened in the boom. Ziwei followed behind Zinti and slowly entered the legendary Tower of the Five Laws. It's just a hall. It's like a real wilderness. It's surrounded by endless, yellow sand and sun. Ziwei himself is a space magician who has mastered 24 empty inscriptions. He has discovered that this is a real multidimensional plane, but it is directly connected to the high tower by a powerful existence with a certain secret method. Among the layers. This is really a miracle that only the legendary magician can do. Because the master of magic is building his own mage tower, he can only embed 1.5 planes into his own tower. The Lord of Change is warming up. I will take you there. When Ziwei curiously looked at the scenery inside the tower, Zinti turned and his body began to shine with white transmitting spells. There is also a transmission matrix at the foot. Space spells are carried forward by the Void Traveler Grodic, but it is not that only space magicians can master space spells. The space spells used by Zinti are obviously unique and self-contained. Ziwei stepped forward and entered the transmission array. The white light flashed, and Zinti and Ziwei disappeared from the hall and appeared in another plane. This is also a real plane, and it is also inside the changing tower. I didn't expect the change tower to be linked to multiple real multi-planes at the same time. This is really a legendary tower. This plane seems to be more profound, and Ziwei secretly runs a space survey to detect the characteristics of this mysterious plane. Some features don't require such a complicated method, such as gravity. As soon as he entered this plane, Ziwei felt a sinking. The gravity of this plane was about 3 times that of the mainland of Orient. The normal person would be very uncomfortable, but Zinti, the change mage, had no discomfort here. Obviously he has already adapted to this harsh environment. The oxygen that can be used for breathing in the air is also very thin, the temperature is very low, far below zero, which is a bad and almost impossible to survive. The plane is in the deepest part of the plane. Came the horror of magical fluctuations. There is a battle between the strong is underway. This plane is not big. Both Ziwei and Zinti are high-level magicians, flying very fast, and soon reached the place where the battle took place. This chapter is still 200 words not finished. Friendship tips don't want to point, wait for me to finish reading and then read. Sorry, for the full time, the meeting will be the last day of June, I will make a big explosion. The oxygen that can be used for breathing in the air is also very thin, the temperature is very low, far below zero, which is a poor and almost impossible to survive. In the deepest part of the plane, there was a horrible magical wave, and there was a battle between the strong ones going on. This plane is not big, both Ziwei and Zinti are high-level magicians, flying very fast, and soon reached the place where the battle took place. This plane is not big, both Ziwei and Zinti are high-level magicians, flying very fast, and soon reached the place where the battle took place. To be continued.